As promised, our guest for the next couple of minutes, Chris Graham of the Augusta Free Press, who is here to talk about the week in review from a news standpoint. Chris, lots to talk about. Of course, earlier in the week we had that decision from Judge Hudson, which the judge upheld the argument raised by Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli with respect to health care and the legislation's requirement that folks purchase health care. Cuccinelli, of course, arguing that that was unconstitutional, and at least temporarily, a federal judge agreeing with the Attorney General.
Yeah, and it was surprising in the context of how there have been other court rulings, other cases that have been brought challenging the constitutionality of the healthcare reform law, and we've seen other federal judges say that the law is constitutional. So here we have one judge who breaks with that, and that's really, I think, all that Republicans wanted to see happen, is that they could forum shop enough, they could find one judge to rule their way so that they could have an excuse really to take it ultimately to the Supreme Court. That's where the final resting place for this whole fight will go. But Judge Henry Hudson, the Fourth Circuit Court in Richmond, I guess they'll be the next to hear this, but he rules that the essence of it is that the key part to a lot of people for how this healthcare reform would work was that individuals would be required to purchase health insurance. That was the key part of this. Really, how do you make a reform like this work unless people are required to buy health insurance? And so the way the federal government used the Constitution to say that this was justified was, one, the Commerce Clause, which allows for the regulation by Congress of all commerce, interstate commerce, and two, then the Necessary and Proper Clause. And what Judge Hudson ruled was that the healthcare reform failed to meet the standards of the Commerce Clause and the Necessary and Proper Clause. Basically, that Congress did not have the power to require people to participate in commerce, basically agreeing with Ken Cuccinelli's contention that people who choose not to buy health insurance are not engaging in commerce, they're inactive, and criticisms come down for Henry Hudson in his ruling that, well, one, the word active and activity does not appear in the Commerce Clause or in the Necessary and Proper Clause, so he's inserting some things in the Constitution that aren't there. And of course, there's decades of precedent, according to a lot of people who are being critical of this decision, that Congress would have, statutory power to regulate commerce. This is commerce. This is economic activity. And so what we get here again is this fight will go on now. I mean, even Judge Hudson in his ruling, I read through the ruling. He notes a couple different places in the ruling that he realizes this is going to go to the Supreme Court. So this is just the first battle. Ken Cuccinelli claiming victory, but it's long from over.
Yeah, at least temporarily, he's got another feather in his cap in a possible race down the road for governor.
Well, he does that now. He's already, I think within hours of the ruling coming down, he had sent a fundraising email out trying to turn this to his advantage politically. What's interesting, though, this wasn't for governor, but I saw another poll in the Senate race. The hypothetical Senate matchups between Jim Webb and various opponents. And in this particular poll, we've seen that other polls have the race neck and neck. Webb and George Allen, who's the presumed candidate for the Republicans in 2012, at least at this point. Also, he was tested against Bob McDonnell, and then a test of Jim Webb with Ken Cuccinelli. It was interesting. Jim Webb was actually, I think, ahead by a point of George Allen, down 3 points to Bob McDonnell, but ahead of Cuccinelli by 11 points. And I wonder if there might not be some sense of public sentiment towards Ken Cuccinelli and his activist Attorney General. That's the first one I've seen. I mean, we haven't seen Cuccinelli really tested in that way in polls much in the last, say, 6 months or so. And so I wonder if that might be, here Jim Webb would be struggling against Bob McDonnell and George Allen, but he would, blow the doors off of Ken Cuccinelli. I think that's interesting, maybe an interesting perspective. Of course, from Ken Cuccinelli's perspective, he's got all these headlines coming his way almost every day with the various things he has going on. And, he's certainly building towards something. I don't know what it is, but he's certainly building towards something.
And Bob McDonnell yesterday proposing the first of probably many cuts, funding cuts. One of those cuts impacting public broadcasting, which I think you mentioned a few minutes ago before we started this interview today, which is a great surprise.
Not a great surprise, no. We've really seen Republicans going after public broadcasting, at least since the Newt Gingrich contract with America era, probably before that. The political argument is that public broadcasting gets this public support, and the general argument is it's liberal. So why should we support that? Make them fend for themselves, just like Rush Limbaugh does. I mean, that's the example we usually hear. And so in the guise of budget balancing, let's save $2 million in Virginia by cutting funding for public broadcasting. It's something that comes up again every year, and in Virginia, we've seen consistently, we've had a pretty much Republican-controlled General Assembly. Now, I know the last couple of years we've had Democrats in control of the Senate, but for a long time there, dating back to George Allen, we had Republicans in control of both the House and Senate, and even though these proposals would come up, they would never go through. Because there'd be enough support given to, shown by the public broadcasting industry that this funding would continue. I don't expect anything different necessarily to come up this time. I'm not hearing the hue and cry that we've heard in past years about public broadcasting. In fact, I think a lot of people would agree that public broadcasting probably is a very necessary service in this day and age. And so, but it is interesting. It comes up again, in the grand scheme of things, we have close to a $40 billion annual budget. Or biannual budget, and $2 million is not going to balance the budget one way or the other. This is not a budget balancing measure, which it's been advertised as. It's political posturing, and it's just interesting to me. I think this is something that I think down the road Republicans will drop because when you're doing political calculus, you reach out to moderates, maybe you reach out to some people on the other side who like public broadcasting. I don't think public broadcasting appeals only to liberals or conservatives. I think there's a wide mix of programming out there. But this is a clause célèbre for them on that side, and we'll see it probably die a quick death in the General Assembly early next year.
Chris, lastly, of course, we got lots of snow throughout the region today. Your thoughts on that? And of course, we've seen changes this winter as opposed to last winter as far as VDOT and snow removal plans and whatnot.
Yeah, well, Virginia hadn't had a tough winter for a long time, really, at least 10 years or so until last year. And so, maybe we'd gotten lax, global warming, whatever, we bought into the idea that we weren't going to have bad winters anymore. And so, and plus you can get out of practice. Well, last year was practice and more. And so, yeah, we know what happened last year. The VDOT has been, I think, pretty effective in looking at what was done right, what was not done right. Certainly, cities in Virginia, which are responsible for their own snow removal, had a lot to learn from as well. I live in the city of Waynesboro, and there were lots of criticism, lots of critics out there for the city and what they did and didn't do. And so, we're ready for it this time, hopefully. I'm looking out my window here. I'm on Main Street in Waynesboro, and Main Street, it looks like they make the city crews probably pre-treated the streets because the street out here is pretty clear right now. The side streets are what, side streets are, but, certainly lessons learned last year. And, the lesson learned by us as just private citizens is, maybe we thought last year's winter was the winter to end all winters. It's not even winter yet. I mean, we're technically still in fall, and we're already getting a significant snowfall here. It's been really Arctic cold the last couple of weeks. Maybe this is going to be another one of those winters, unfortunately. So here we go. Let's start to hunker down.
We'll see how things work out. Chris, really quick, what do we look for in the coming days from the Augusta Free Press?
Well, today I'll have a story. I've been in contact with some people about another proposal from the Governor's Reform Commission that would take away the Virginia Freedom of Information Act Council, the FOIA Council as we call it, that can be used by citizens, by members of the media, by state government employees to ask questions about government activity and what's legal, what's not, what public information can be given out, what should be kept secret or private, I guess you'd say. And so there's a proposal to eliminate the FOIA Council, roll those operations into the Attorney General's office. Critics of that include, the Virginia Press Association, but also some privacy or open government groups, I should say, who represent private citizens. And just because of the fact that this organization is something that is separate from the state government in a great sense. I mean, it's funded by the state government, but it's not tied to the political part of things. Well, I've talked with the head of the Virginia Open Government Coalition. Also, I've got a comment from the governor's office on this proposal, and we'll have an in-depth look at the ins and outs of this proposal. And besides that, we'll be getting ready for Christmas. We're not too far away from Christmas, so we'll be getting folks ready for the end of the Christmas shopping season and more.
Sounds great. Chris Graham with the Augusta Free Press right there, and we're going to come back to more of Online again on this Thursday on Classic Country, AM 1450, right after this.